by show of hands, have ever had to do something simply because it's considered to be tradition in your family? Alright, so as you can see, most of us have. Well, coming from a very large Italian family, we honor and practice our traditions from generation to generation. One of the most important traditions that has been passed down from my grandparents, to my father, to my mother, to me, is that you complete your first Holy Communion in the Catholic Church. So today I'm going to share with you my personal communion experience and hopefully provide you with a better understanding of what it means to complete family traditions. I will be telling you about, I will be telling you a little more info about what a communion is, so some background information if you're not familiar with it. Then I will be discussing the steps I took in order to receive my communion, also the traditional attire. So according to my audience analysis, several of you were pretty familiar with the communion and the tradition of it. However, for those of you that were not, I'm going to give you some background info. But before I do that, I'd like to show you some photos of my mother and her twin sister on the lower right side of the screen in their communion dresses, and my aunt on the upper right side of the screen. This just kind of gives you an idea of how long the tradition has been going on. My aunt in the upper right top of the screen is now 64 years old, so she's probably about 8 or 7 in this picture. So that being said, a communion is a very big deal to the Italians. It is a rite of passage for a child as they are becoming an active participant in the Catholic Church and committing to their faith. Now, First Communion literally refers to receiving the body and blood of Jesus, as Catholics believe it. So you're given a small bland wafer and you're allowed to sip from the cup of red wine. Now, for parents and grandparents, it's a very proud moment. They're watching their grandchildren or child pass on the tradition, and there's a huge ceremony in the church the day of where during the regular Mass you walk through, have this ceremony where you say certain prayers, you're anointed by the priest, and then afterwards there's a huge celebration, lots of food, family, friends. So it's a really, really big deal in my family. And now that I've enlightened you on what a communion is, I'd like to share with you the steps that one must take to receive communion. So nobody can just come in and be like, hey, I'm here, I want to receive communion. You can't do that. In the church, it is a big deal that you earn the right, so to speak. So you have to take religion classes, and you have to attend catechism, and it's recommended that you attend Sunday Mass. So I did all of that. I would attend Mass on Sundays with my family. Catechism class was about 2 or 3 times a week, and it was extremely boring. I was 8 years old at the time, and you have, older women and men teaching you religion, basically saying, like, respect your elders and you listen to me. So it was fairly boring, and I could not wait to be done with class. My parents knew that I hated going to class so much that we lived across from the church, and they would have to literally walk me across to church and walk me into the classroom because they thought if they just let me walk, I would go and sit outside of the church or pretend like I went. So they would have to walk me over, and it was pretty funny. I was ready for the day to come, and before I knew it, the day had arrived, and it was time for me to receive my communion. Now, on the day of, you are required or basically encouraged to wear traditional attire. And if you look at the photo on the screen now, this is a photo of me on my communion day. It's tradition that young girls wear white silk dresses, sometimes gloves, a veil, and that young boys wear white suits, as you can see in these photos. A photograph of my brother holding the Bible, and then the one in the prayer post is my younger cousin. So on the day of my communion, I was expecting to arrive to church and see my fellow classmates dressed this way. However, that was not the case. I walked into a full Mass of about 200 people, looked around for my classmates, and found that I was the only one dressed head to toe in white. I literally looked at my classmates, turned my butt around, and walked straight out the doors of the church. I was mortified. My mom and my grandmother then proceeded to sit outside with me and kind of bicker back and forth. My grandmother was like, oh, you're wearing the veil and that's it. She's like hardcore Italian, so I didn't understand at the time why it was important, but she explained to me that her great-grandmother had worn one, her mom had worn one, she herself had worn one, and then my mother had explained that she had worn one and gone through the process as well. At this moment, it was when I realized that this tradition wasn't just pointless. We were going through the motions and the steps of this for a reason, and that is when I learned that it was now my turn to pass on the tradition, which was kind of cool because I was growing into my faith and learning that I could hopefully one day, if I have children, pass it on to them. And I had the opportunity to share my communion experience this past spring with my younger cousin because she was being confirmed and receiving communion at the same time. And when you're confirmed into the church, you need to have a sponsor. So she asked me to be her sponsor, which I was very honored by. And you should see the photos on the screen, but they're not there. So anyway, she asked me to be her sponsor, and it was very cool for me to do that and kind of guide her along her spiritual journey and share with her that. So today I told you a little bit about my communion experience. I explained to you what it is and what it means to the Catholic faith. I shared with you the steps on what I took to get there, and I shared with you my mortifying day of experience. I hope that you can maybe learn something from this about family tradition, and if you're ever struggling to come to terms with something that your family does and you're not really 100% about it, that you may recall on my speech or kind of use it as an example. Thank you.